Hello everybody, how are you all doing? I hope you're all fantastic, because so am I, and we together can be the Fantastic Four. Anyway, let us not make this any longer than it needs to be. I have already, indulged in some pointless faffery. This is a fork from China. It looks like a Fox 32, but it isn't. It cost me $120, and I don't even remember what the brand was. I purchased it for my commuter because I needed to replace a rigid fork, so that's precisely what I did. I haven't opened it, I haven't serviced it, I just put it on a bike and rode it to completion for the last 6 months, and you can even, if you squint your eyes, see that there's a discoloration over here. It's barely visible, especially in this light. Unfortunately, I won't be having anything better. Anyway, if you're interested in the features, 50mm axle, a lockout, which doesn't work anymore, although not really a problem because I'm not using it, air chamber, and a rebound adjustment. This adjustment was the reason why I bought the more expensive version, because there was also one for $100 without a rebound adjustment. However, I consider a suspension without this adjustment to be, pretty much non-functional. Anyway, the time has come for me to finally service this thing, and I am interested what I'm going to find inside, because this discoloration starts to be a little bit worrisome. Anyway, let us put this somewhere else. This is my X-Fusion Metric HLR something awesome enduro fork, which also needs to be serviced, although this one is going to be serviced as a routine service. You can see it was used quite extensively over the last few days, especially since I completed the conversion of my rear hub, and I have a wheel which is installed on the bike which you can't see, so I'm not going to be talking about this anymore. Anyway, I'm going to service it today, and I thought to show you, it would be interesting to show you what is the difference between something that cost $1,000 US, although to be honest I bought it on clearance on Chain Reaction Cycles for half that price, and I have to admit this is the best fork I ever had, at least the best fork of this caliber I ever had, because if we were to make a best fork in this caliber, that would be a Manitou Minute Pro I had like 5 years ago. I regret selling that fork, up to, today really. Anyway, we're going to compare this fork to this fork, and obviously we have to make a few caveats for this process. First of all, obviously these forks are meant for two different things. This is a cross-country riding around your town fork type of deal, and even if this was a Fox 32, it would be only a cross-country fork anyway. And this is a burly enduro fork. This is 120mm of travel, this is 180mm of travel. They are of a different category. However, they are going to give us a glimpse what we can expect if we up our expectation by approximately $880. What you're going to get, most likely, when you go from something like this to something like this. And obviously we can only judge what we're going to find. I don't have a spectrometer here, so I can't check the material compositions of the legs, of the stanchions, or anything. This is just going to be my eyes see this, therefore I think this is better than the other. And obviously our eyes don't see the material composition. I read on the lowers of the orange fork that the brand name is Pasak, so I'm going to refer to it as such from now on. Unfortunately, there is no notion of a model name, so it's just the Pasak. We've got both forks disassembled before you up to the same stage. I haven't removed the damping units because on the Pasak, a removal of the damper requires a special tool, which I don't have, and is kind of unusual as a splined something interface. Maybe something from RST would work on this one. I don't know. However, there is no point in removing it because the damping unit is both sealed and non-serviceable. At least it doesn't seem from the lower part here that you can do anything to it other than replace with a new one from someone else, or maybe Pasak even. I haven't searched for a replacement on AliExpress. When it comes to the metric, I haven't removed the damping unit because I had it serviced this spring. There's no need to do it, and even if I wanted to, I don't have a 28mm socket. Going at it with a flat wrench or adjustable wrench would be pure barbarism. So it stays here. There's nothing wrong with it at this very moment. I'm just servicing the fork because the winter is coming. Seeing both forks disassembled, you can note that they are almost identical, with this exception that the metric has these two caps which protect the knobs on the bottom of the fork, which would be here. And there are a bit more knobs to actually service because this damper here is a RC2 damper. Xfusion calls it HLR, but essentially it is a slow rebound and fast and slow compression adjustments. So there are three knobs on this entire cartridge. When it comes to the PASAC, it's only a rebound and there's a lockout on the top of the fork. And I am actually annoyed at you people because your insistence on having a lockout caused most of manufacturers only include a lockout on the cheaper forks, even though much more useful slow compression adjustment is essentially almost identical to the lockout, and well, it's absent because of you. Those forks are almost identical when it comes to their design, and the differences between them are in details. First of all, I'm going to presuppose, which is not necessarily true, that the same amount of engineering and ingenuity went into both forks, even if the most pessimistic case, the PASAC was essentially copied from a more successful design by whomever else. What I mean by this is that the damper is actually fine, the damper on this one is also fine, they are been tuned, they've been designed properly, and they are behaving as you would expect from a damper on a respectable suspension. This is not necessarily true because obviously PASAC doesn't have the social proof which Xfusion clearly does, because Xfusion is a brand that has been with us for years and PASAC is just something from AliExpress. But let us go beyond that point. Let's presuppose that they are well expertly designed when it comes to the parameters of the dampers, of the springs and everything. What are the differences between these two forks? On the damping side, we can't do much. We have already presupposed that they are good. However, on the Xfusion you can already see that the damping unit is much more complicated. There are more parts, even though we didn't disassemble this, because here we only see the pipe going into another pipe, and there is most likely some piston here with an orifice damper, and that's everything you're going to get out of this. Here, however, in order to facilitate three distinct adjustments, you have to have much more complicated mechanisms inside, and you can see that there are places to attach a wrench and disassemble the thing, and this is why I claim that this is fully serviceable unit. You can't do anything with this. This thing most likely cost quite a few thousand man-hours to design, so you've got the first difference. But, as I said, expertly designed. But this is better. The air spring on both forks uses the same design. A positive air chamber. A negative spring is a steel spring, which is here. And as you are pumping the fork, and pressure builds up in the positive air chamber, the spring is resting here on this cap. There you go. And it's being compressed, and this adds preload to the negative spring. There's a case in this type of a fork that it is quite adjustable, but they are sensitive to the input pressure of the positive chamber, which means in many forks you can't get full suspension travel for some riders, especially for lighter rider, because they can't fully compress the spring. However, as they say, the differences are in the details. This is a design that has been copied from SR Santur. There's a plastic air piston. There's this rod here that goes inside. There's this mushroom end to it. There are two springs, the firmer one, which is on the top, and there's a softer one on the bottom. On which position they are, that doesn't really matter, but they are in line. When you are pumping the fork, both of these springs are getting compressed. On extrusion, you can see that there are two springs. This is the air piston. It obviously works here, but there are two springs on the negative side, and the first one is the big one, and the second, the firmer one, is the inner one. And as you are pumping up the fork, only the big one gets initially compressed, and that sets the travel of the entire suspension unit. What's the difference between those two? Apart from the fact that for very light riders or for very heavy riders, this requires a different spring. This does, but to a different degree. The small bump sensitivity on this fork is going to be much better, because you've got only one spring that gets compressed during the preloading and air pumping phase. This is a quite significant known problem or characteristic of just about every Santur fork. They aren't very sensitive to small bumps. Even in the forks of the same caliber as this one, it works pretty much the same. And I had SR Santur Durolax, which was identical almost to this one when it comes to the caliber, and this one blows it out of the water. It's sensitive, it's like flying almost. As I already said, when it comes to the air piston, this is just a plastic sleeve which goes onto this rod, and it sits stiff on this rod. You can see a nice feature on the extrusion, that there's a ball joint here which allows for quite a bit of movement to any side you wish, which means that when the fork gets compressed or hits stuff and is being bent, the air piston is always going to be in line with the stanchion of the fork, which means that you're not going to be burping air or losing air or as much as it happens on these forks. You can see, ouch. Maybe you can, maybe you cannot see, but in order for the Santur fork to work correctly, or the fork of this design to work correctly, there's a scoop seal on this piston here, and it's all caked in very thick grease, because otherwise they are going to be losing air. It's pretty much an endemic problem on any Santur fork that follows this pattern. You need to regularly check whether you're not losing air, and if you do, you need to add a little bit of a very thick oil to the air chamber in order to act as a sealant. This most likely is not going to be happening on this design. Our Passac copy of a Fox 32 is pretending that it's full of Kashima coat, but however it's not just, well, for aesthetics. Every part that is sliding over something, so the stanchions, the damping unit, the pushrod of the air chamber are hard anodized in this greenish color. This greenish color is from a lubricant that is being added during the process of anodizing. So not only this is hard stuff, this hard stuff has been caked with a lubricant, and every part of this fork has been treated like this, which means that not only it's going to have less friction, unlike this, but also it's going to wear for a much longer time. And I don't know whether this is visible in the video, because I'm recording this, I'm not editing yet. However, you can see here that this decorative Kashima coat is actually wearing out over here, and this fork has just 6 months to it. This one, however, has 3 years, and there's not a speck of wear on it. I mean, it's going to happen eventually, but most likely when I'm going to be retired. Alright, let's peek inside of both forks, because that's important. This is the Passac, this is the X-Fusion Metric. Both have been hollowed out in order to save weight and are ribbed for his pleasure. However, that's not really important, that just saves a few grams. On the Passac, you have just dust seal. There is no skirt here, which is acting as an oil seal, which means that this fork is not lubricated with oil, because whatever you put down there is going to get vomited out, because there's nothing stopping it from being vomited out. This is the reason why in Santur forks, when you lubricate them with oil, then for however many days you're going to get rings of oil on the upper stanchions. Anyway, dust seal and the bushing, which is the part that is actually sliding on the uppers, is made out of simple plastic. That's just Teflon or something like that, so not just plastic or any plastic, but nonetheless, this is a fairly hard material, and this here is responsible for wearing out the decorative layer on my upper stanchions. When it comes to the extrusion metric, you can see that there's a dust seal, then there's this skirt here, which means that this is a combined dust and oil seal, which means that this fork is actually lubricated with 10 or 15 cc's of oil down there. Then there's a sponge, which in a healthy fork is supposed to be soaked with oil, and I'm going to be replacing this one today because this one is old. And below it there's a bushing, which is Teflon coated, providing very little friction, and there's this channel here through which a lubricating oil can be cycled through the entire fork. This combination is responsible for this bottomless feeling on a high-end fork, which people are so seeking after. And there you have it. These are the differences that at the first glance $880 are going to give you. Is Pasak a bad fork? No, it's not. It hasn't broken yet. It works pretty much as advertised, and for the use I am using it, it's fine. However, when I compare this to the X-Fusion, it's completely different class of product. The metric is much better, much more sensitive, much stiffer, has much more adjustments, and I'm fairly certain that I'm going to be binning the Pasak. I'm still going to be riding the X-Fusion. Anyway, thank you for your undivided attention. I hope to see you in the next video, which is going to be about, I don't know yet, but it's certainly going to be about something. And I hope to see you on the next one.